inside, running route to the 40, breaks it to the 50, 8 to the 40, 8 to the 30, to the 20, to the 10, to the 5, touchdown.
Today, we're back with our fourth guest and installment of One More Down podcast. We have the legendary Sylvester Buster Stanley Jr., 1989 graduate of East High School, University of Michigan defensive tackle and graduate, and long time East Sider from Youngstown. And we're honored and privileged and grateful that you're taking this time out with us to share your memories, give us some of your experiences, and take us on that pathway that football and life has journeyed you over the years.
It's a pleasure being here. It's a pleasure being here.
So typically, how we start off with, we kind of like to hear your origin story. Are you able to speak about your mother and your father and your sister?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I said, born and raised Youngstown, Ohio. Grew up on the east side. Mom Theodore Stanley, dad Sylvester Stanley Jr. Sylvester Stanley Sr. He's no longer with us, but he's still with us. So my sister is 4 years older than me, Marcella Stanley. She also went to East High School. My whole family went to East High School, from my grandparents to my uncle. So everybody was at East High Golden Bear. So I grew up 211 South Garland. If you have my old phone number and you're trying to find me, you could just call that number because my mama ain't changed that phone number in over 60-something years. So that's how a lot of people find me. They'll see her or they'll call that number and she'll pick up the phone and say, hey, I'll give him your number. So, but yeah, so that's just me. I mean, like I said, mom and dad was very strict, like all parents are. They just want the best for you. They instill a bunch of stuff into you so you can be successful when you get older. And then, like I said, just pass it down. Because when Kevin Harris told me about the project, I was like, anything I can do, just give me a call. And I told him to pass my number along. Anything I can help with, just give me a call. So I love being a part of things like this.
Well, we're so happy and glad to have you. And if you're anything like I am, my parents' telephone number hasn't changed in my whole lifetime. It's probably the only number that you know by heart these days.
Exactly.
Well, and then springing off of that, you mentioned you grow up on Garland, and where'd you go to elementary school at?
Oh, I went to Roosevelt Elementary School. It was a 5-minute walk from my house. From there, I went to Adams Junior High School. So that's where, they split the school. So if you were on this side of the street, then you went to North. If you were on the other side of the street, you went to Adams. So I had to go to Adams. And then from there, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So now that probably doesn't seem foreign to the current residents of Youngstown now, given the landscape of boundary lines and school transportation. But for yourself, having to go over to the south side and attend junior high school, where you have another school that you probably were within some semblance of walking distance for those days. How was that, having to get up and catch a bus or get a ride all the way across town and leave your surroundings?
It was kind of hard because if you weren't at that bus stop at a certain time, I think his name was Mr. James, he wasn't waiting for you. So there was many days where we ran up the hill, he was already gone, and then we had to run down the hill to catch him when he made that circle to get the other kids. So yeah, so it was kind of difficult because mom would wake you up and you say, "I got 5 more minutes." And that 5 more minutes almost cost me
Yeah.
because mom wouldn't have been happy because she had to take us to school that day.
You go from Roosevelt to Adams. Are you involved in youth sports prior to entering Adams?
No, I was too big to play any other sports, basketball or whatever. I couldn't make the weight. So my mom told me, "Hey, just wait till you get to junior high school. There is no weight, so you'll be good to go then." So I bided my time, and I waited till I got to junior high school.
It's funny you say that. We talked, Ron and I talked a couple different times, and Ron talks a lot about his little league experience and coming up and I told him I was a lineman as well, and I'd been playing. My dad took me up to try out, and I'd have been playing 3-4 years older, and it's one of those things where I didn't play till 7th grade as well, and so I'm assuming that's probably where you started, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, my mom took me up there, but I couldn't make the weight. I was like, okay, I always like to eat, so I might as well wait. I might as well wait to junior high school, where, like I said, I ain't had have a number put on me.
And so when you got to high school, what was that transition like? So, I'm sure you were playing football in the neighborhood. I'm sure you were involved playing sports, but just not organized. So when you first started lining up for Adams and playing junior high, what was that experience like?
Oh, it was a great experience. I mean, I was the type of person who loved to compete. So when I got the chance to go out there and just play and hit somebody, I mean, it was the most joyous thing I guess I could have done. Like I said, I was free. I didn't have no weight class put on me, and like I said, I just wanted to go out there and compete against somebody else to see who's going to be the better person.
And then, so who was your coach at Adams?
Oh my gosh, I say I'm old now. My memory's shot. um, no, I ain't even gonna. I can't remember. I
Well,
can see
well,
the bad part about it. I can see his face because he had curly dark hair. I can see his face plain as day, but I cannot remember his name.
and you're in that same class as Kevin Harris,
Yep,
correct?
yep. That's where I met Kevin at. Yep, Adams Junior High School.
And where did they have you at the center position those first years of playing
Played,
football?
yeah, I played center. I played defense. Like I said, back in those days, you had to go both ways. So I said, put me where you want to put me at. Like, so long as I get to play on this field, I'm good.
You cutting your teeth uh, at the junior high level, kind of getting that introduction to what formal organized football looks like, feels like, the good parts and the bad parts. Because for me, I was never a guy who enjoyed the whole conditioning and getting into shape and the running and the yelling and the punishment aspect of it. But I loved the games. I loved getting up on Saturday mornings, representing my neighborhood, representing my side of town. What about you? Did you fall in love with the sport initially, or was it something that you had to grow into?
Oh no, like I said, when I was growing up, I always watched the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I really didn't have a college team. So I watched the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steel Curtain, Franco Harris. So that's where it started to boil inside of me. But I like to play all type of sports. So I knew about conditioning and all that before I even got to the 7th grade because I played baseball. You didn't have to have a weight in baseball. So I played on my uncle's baseball team. And like I said, he also went to East. He played basketball. He ran track. He didn't play football. He ain't like to get hit. But so he had, like I said, he knew about working out. So he had us as little kids, running sprints, running around the track, and different things like that. So I knew about the conditioning before the 7th grade. So I was kind of already in that mode where I know I got to exercise before I play.
One of the things that we try and cover is that high school experience, and when I was kind of thinking about like talking to you, what I really wanted to know was what was kind of the landscape of like high school football in Youngstown at that time as you kind of enter in. If I'm not mistaken, you were a 4-year starter at East. Um,
Yep.
so you're right in the mix. Most freshmen are, kind of transitioning in, getting the little feeling out period. Um, what was that landscape like in the city as you enter high school?
I mean, it very competitive. I mean, because basically you knew people from, like I said, South Side, West Side. You wanted to have bragging rights. When you go up against them, oh, we beat you guys last year, we beat you guys this year. So I mean, everybody basically. I knew a lot of people because my dad. He grew up with a lot of some of the players that were on the team, fathers and mothers and things like that, that they knew each other. So, it was, you want to have bragging rights, and me coming into high school, transferring over to high school from junior high. And I didn't, it wasn't, I don't, it wasn't difficult for me. I mean, because I really was just focused. I love to compete. So it didn't matter if I was a freshman, going out there against a senior. Because when I first got to East High School, they had the JV, and we were doing 2-a-days. So the JV only had one practice. So what happened was, like I said, I'm out there, I'm out there causing havoc in the first practice. And they looking at me like, what is he doing? I'm literally just trying to kill somebody. But then as the everybody else went home, Coach Jackson came and said, "Hey, we want you to be on the varsity." And this was after, like I said, a couple practices. And so I had to stay for the second practice. But back in the day, you ain't have no cell phone to call your mom and say, "Hey, mom, I'm gonna be on the varsity now." So I ain't come home. So you know who came looking for me?
Absolutely.
She's like, she wanted to find out where her baby was. So I turned around. She at the fence, and Coach Jackson had to go talk to her, make sure smooth everything out with her. And she's like, "Okay." She's like, I'll be back to pick him up at 4 or 5. And so it was just so funny. Like I said, it was just great experience. Transferring over from junior high school to high school. But I just wanted to go out there and compete. And like I said, I didn't care if you were a senior or a freshman. They were going to recognize what you had to bring to the table.
In the city at that time, uh, you had Rand, Wilson, East, South, Cheney. North was probably not in the mix because you mentioned you were going to, that was an option to go to middle school. What and I've talked a lot about this to Burtis about how competitive the city was. Who was kind of that rivalry that you felt like either because of proximity or because of competitiveness, who did you feel like was your rival in the city series at that time?
Um, for me, it was probably Wilson because I knew a lot of people that I went to school with at Adams. So
Hmm.
me, it would have been Wilson. It just depends on where other people grew up at. Some people might have family on that side of town and they knew a bunch of people from South, or they knew a bunch of people from North. So I knew the majority of people that I played junior high school ball with that went to Wilson. So I would say that would probably been my biggest rivalry.
I coached Keelan Dykes, still friends with Keelan Dykes, who played at Cheney as a freshman. And when, I talk to him now, he talks about how difficult that was his freshman year playing varsity, just the mental piece, the physical piece. Up until that point, he was probably the best player on the field. And then all of a sudden you're not. How was that transition, being a varsity player as a freshman for you?
Um, I don't. I mean, for me, it wasn't difficult because I was always a big kid.
Hmm.
So physically, I mean, I was lifting weights in the 7th grade. I had a weight bench down in my basement. I was doing different things my uncle, wanted me to do, taught me to do. And I mentioned my sister Marcella. She went to East High School. She played volleyball. She played basketball. She did track. She did the shot and disc. So she gave me insights on training and different things you have to do to get your body ready. So by that time when I got to high school, I had all this information and all these workouts that I was doing. It wasn't physically I could do it. The other part was mentally, can I do it? And like I said, me just having that mindset where, you know, I might be a freshman, but we both put on our pants one leg at a time. So I'm going to go out there and give you my best, no matter if you're a senior or if you're a freshman.
So one of the things that was a hallmark of Youngstown during that time was that community access, and you're interacting and interfacing with kids that may be 2, 3, 4 grades ahead of you in some of those activities as you're coming up and getting into those early parts of your teen years. So when you talk about not shying away from the spotlight or feeling like you're not prepared or ready to compete with those guys who may have been in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade at that time, is any of that a function of just the makeup of your neighborhood and the age groups that you're intertwined with just on a regular day-to-day basis?
I would say it was probably a makeup of the neighborhood because remember my sister, you know, all her friends knew me, so
Yeah,
all the guys from the football team, they knew me, and then as they were like freshmen and, sophomores, so when they got to be seniors, that's when I was starting to come around. But that, all those younger guys knew me too. So I think that was a part of, not transitioning that, all these guys knew me and I wasn't, it's not like college where they didn't know you, you weren't in the
right.
community, that's a totally different story. But when you're in a community and like I said, your town is only so big. So everybody knew basically everybody. And like I said, with my family, everybody going to East, everybody knew who I was because everybody knew who my dad was, my sisters, my uncle, you know, because it's so funny. A lot of times, you're gonna ask somebody, do you know Sylvester Stanley? And they'll say Sylvester Stanley, and then they'll say, do you know Buster Stanley? And oh yeah, I know Buster Stanley. It's so funny that people relate that nickname that was given to me by my grandmother because she would not watch me because I would literally bust windows out of her house and everything. So literally, my mom had to take me everywhere. So yeah, so that's yeah. So in that community, everybody knew everybody.
Entering East as a freshman in 1985, about.
Yep.
Okay, so in terms of the football landscape during the city at that time, you're talking about Rand having a really great team. They had the Graveyard Crew,
Hmm.
as they were known over there. The Donaldson brothers are a prominent part of that team. Kevin Madison is a great player on that team. Um, you're facing off with South and the Dabney twins, who were great players over there at South. You obviously are very familiar with Kevin Harris, and then the two of you guys, you have that connection of getting on the field very early in your careers at those schools. Um, with the other podcast that Dallas is associated with, that once a cowboy, always a cowboy. They had the chance to talk to Coach Turkle from Rand,
Okay.
and so he had made mention of that team from Rand in '85. They were the first city team to ever make a playoff, and then uh, you follow up the next year with East going 9-2 and making the playoff and winning the city title, and then South follows you guys the next year in '86. I'm sorry, '87, where they make the playoffs, and then myself, was very fortunate to be a part of that first playoff team over at Cheney. So as you're coming into East and you're seeing where the bar is in terms of competition and how you have to prepare and how you have to be ready. You had a lot of success that freshman year. saw that you led the team in tackles as a ninth grader. And then sometimes when when you're looking at professional sports and you have a rookie that's exceptional and he's playing well and it looks like he's been doing this for years, and then you have that sophomore fall off, for lack of a better term. So that first year, are you just out there playing off of excitement and adrenaline, or are you playing with a focus and a technique and a determination and a purpose and a goal as a ninth grader starting on that team?
Uh, my coach, Coach Frost, our D line coach, he made sure you had the technique. You weren't going to be out there freewheeling and just running around, because there's many a days if you didn't do it right, you were running around that track. He said, I see you when you get back. So, I mean, he really had us disciplined, teaching us the correct techniques, teaching us little tricks and things that we can look for when we're playing the defensive line. And he got, like I said, with conditioning and everything, he got you ready to go. So it wasn't just, that's just, me. And then there's another guy, Don Queener, who also was a freshman who got moved up too. But we both, they prepared us very, very well. Him and Coach Jackson got our team ready to go, really focused. And it was a technique and, using your natural abilities that God gave you, to go out there and get the job done.
Can you talk a little bit about Coach Jackson? That's a name that very successful coach, well-respected coach, not just by his players, but even by his peers. I know Ron Burtis mentions him as one of the guys that he coached against who he really respected. Can you talk a little bit about him and just his style and his mentorship?
I mean, Coach Jackson was the type of guy that you literally looked up to. I mean, if he wasn't the coach the time I came through, and a lot of guys came through, who knows? Who knows where I'd have been at? I mean, he was the right man at the right time in the right place for me. I mean, he was like an extra father figure, but he's gonna get up in your face if you do something wrong. And it didn't just stop after practice, So if you needed help doing something else in the classroom, he would help you out. If you wanted the weight room open on a Saturday, he would come open up the weight room for you. He also he taught you life lessons. He just didn't teach you just football, and definitely, all the players that played for him definitely appreciated that.
The makeup of your team over the course of those years, I heard you mention Coach Frost. Are we talking about Gary Frost?
Yes.
Yeah, now he was a great player in his time at East, all city quarterback. Some of his children went on to be really good players in football later on. You bring up the name Jerron Jenkins. He was the head coach while I was a player at Cheney, and
Yep.
I always watched how he interacted with the boys that were under his charge. The Darnell Bracy's, the Charles Purdue's,
Yeah.
the Fitzgerald brothers. Those were some highly competitive guys who, when you went over there and played them, you might have felt like, hey, we're going to get the win, but when you cross paths with those guys, it's not going to just be an easy walk through the park. They're coming over there and they're going to bring it, and they're going to play all four quarters till the clock hits zero. And then, after those zeros go, you tip your hat to the next man because you already know it might have said we won up there, but there's a couple plays that I lost out there for certain.
Exactly.
And so, in saying that, you played with Derek Pixley and Steve Woodbury during that time.
Yes, I did.
Would you like to, take a little time to, give us some insight into some of those legendary names?
Oh, everybody, like I said, everybody was competitive. I mean, talented. I used to tell people there's a lot of players that were talented on the team that didn't make it to college. That was more talented than me. Like I said, Dwayne Smith, he went on to YSU. He's down here in Atlanta with me. Like I said, Don Queener, Steve Woodbury, um, Pork, um, Tim Rutledge. Um, uh, oh my gosh, it's so many.
Was Kevin Brown one of your
Yep,
teammates?
yep, Kevin Brown, yeah, tight end.
Just mentioning those guys because this is what this podcast is about. Is it's not necessarily about uh, the focus isn't on the accolades. The focus isn't on the end of the career. It's more about the person. It's the
Yeah.
experience. It's the pathway that being part of a group and being part of a team takes you on, and all of those positive things that come from that. So when you give your adulation for a man like Coach Herman Jackson, and then you mention those guys that were a part of your success through that team concept, I think those men, if they get to view this segment, they'll appreciate just knowing that somebody knew that they were great, in their day, in their prime. In our pre-conversation, you had brought up the name Mike Flores
Oh
as
yeah.
one of those guys that were, a person that you aspired to uh, duplicate, or not maybe be exactly like, but for lack of a better term, a person that kind of set the blueprint and showed you what it was to do something that you love and you like.
Oh yeah, he lived, like I said, he lived down the street from me, and him and all of his sisters, and like I said, he played football for um, East, and then I think he went on to, I think he played at Louisville, and then I said he actually played with the Eagles for a couple years. So I mean, just following his career, like I said, growing up, seeing somebody from my actual street, you know, make it all the way up there, and it's like, hey, if he can do it, I want to try to do it too. But like I said, he was more like a big brother, showing me different things, techniques and stuff like that when I was coming up, when I was, in junior high school.
One of the things, you're talking about, a guy on the street that you look up to, and he's going on to play Division 1. So you go through your career, you're having success. You're an all state player. What was, and you mentioned it a minute ago about Coach Jackson being on you about grades and having the opportunity to go to the University of Michigan. What was kind of the recruiting process back in 1989? How did that all transpire?
The recruiting process is totally different nowadays than back then. I mean, literally, they would send you a letter in the mail. And basically they either send it to the school. Most of the time they send it to the school. You get a letter, and it reads where we're looking at you. Maybe get a scholarship. And then they'll send you a brochure. A couple of weeks after of the school. So look through the brochure and things like that. And then when they don't really try to schedule a visit until you, like I said, you get to be a senior. So when you get to be a senior, then they'll have, either one of the coaches, probably the defensive line coach, if they looking at you to play defensive line, he'll come down, he'll meet with you and the coach, and, they'll come to some games. But then when the season's over with, that's when, the recruiting really ramps up. They'll call on the phone, but it really ramps up where, you got Bo Schembechler coming down there. You got Michigan State head coach at the time coming down there. So but it's totally different now. I mean, it's this day and age than when I was coming up. And it's like you say, they can get film off the internet. When I was coming up, you had to send them the reels. And then they went from the reels to the beta or the VHS. So like I said, it's totally different now, where they can get the film like a drop of a dime. And like I said, with cell phones now, they can actually call the kids, and I'm glad I'm not a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's in Michigan at that time was top tier. So I guess the thing that's always kind of interesting there is, nowadays everybody has a huddle account. Every kid has, you know, 10 different highlight films, and you're sending games, so they get to see those plays off that maybe some guys take here and there. Yeah. Um, how did you decide on Michigan? Or I would assume that there was probably a lot of interest or opportunities for you.
Um, Basically, since I didn't grow up, watching college football, like I said before, I was Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steel Curtain. I didn't grow up and watch college football, so I was aimed to go anywhere. But when I went to Michigan, it reminded me of home because if you ever went up there, it's just like YSU. You got the college campus right there. You got the football stadium over there, and you got this little town, Ann Arbor, that reminds me of Youngstown, Ohio. And that's the main reason, like I said, when I went to the University of Michigan, because it wasn't the football. I know they had a great program, but it wasn't the football. Wasn't that, hey, you can come in here and play as a freshman or be on the varsity. It just reminded me of home.
Now, subconsciously, is that maize and blue matching the colors of East? Did that have anything to do with that decision?
No, no, not. It's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. It didn't have anything to do with it.
And then, so you mentioned about the recruiting process at the time, and you're spot on. My process was very very similar. You get the interest letters, you start to get the inquiries, and then the visits to your games to see how you're performing in person.
Hmm.
But it's not until you get that request to come and see the campus that you kind of have that feeling and that idea. Okay, this may be a real possibility for me.
Exactly.
So prior to the recruiting process really presenting itself and making that a real possibility for you, did you have other options that you were thinking about outside of being a scholarship athlete, or other pursuits, or did you even have a place that you thought you would be at prior to uh, Michigan kind of stepping out and becoming the place that felt most comfortable for you?
Um, I mean, I really didn't, until I like my senior year. My plans were if I didn't get a scholarship, I was going to go to YSU.
Yeah.
So my plans to go to the local college, because I didn't want to burden my parents then with out of state tuition and anything like that. So I was going to go to YSU. You know, take general studies, see what I was interested in, and then make my plan from there.
And then, so you select Michigan, which, as Dallas mentioned, they were very top tier, reigning Big Ten champions in football during that time period. They're coming off of a national title in basketball in '89, so I'm sure there's a fervor around the school. There's a expectation of winning surrounding the school. So as you're coming from Youngstown, which all three of us were born in, raised in, we know it's a blue collar place. There's a certain brand of attitude and work ethic that is attached to being from Youngstown, especially during that time. But you're entering a bigger pond, if you will, than what Youngstown is,
Hmm.
and then you're being grouped in with guys who are talented and great in their own right from their respective towns and cities. What is that like to come into that environment, where guys are entrenched, guys are coming in with a lot of uh, accolades and accomplishments? How does Michigan handle the guy with the big name coming in as a recruit versus the guy who's already established himself as a Michigan man?
I mean, I think when I Ron, when I talked to you before, I told you what Coach Jackson, told me when I was about to, leave. He said, you're gonna be back on the bottom when you get there, and you got to work your way back up. So I took that as a challenge. Like you said, you're coming into a bigger pond, and all these people that you not in your community, so you really don't know too much about them. So like I said, I did my little research on all the defensive linemen they were bringing in, and when I got there was a guy named Ward Manuel who actually hosted me when I came there, and he had a neck problem before the end of the year before I got there, and within a couple practices, his neck really acted up where he's trying to took a couple hits that he called it quits. So he couldn't play anymore because of his neck. So our coach came to I think it was three defensive linemen that came in that 3 or 4 defensive linemen that came in that class, and he basically said, "There's one spot open. There's 4 of you. Who's gonna get that spot?" I took that as a challenge.
Yes.
Like I said before, I put my pants leg on one pants leg at a time. He's same as me, and I was like, I'm gonna go out there and get it, and that's what I went out there and did.
In high school, you can really make a career without really growing as a player in terms of your technique and your preparation. If you're a top apex predator at the high school level from day one, you can be that all the way through graduation if you want to.
Yeah.
Now in college, it's different because there's competition uh, daily. They are recruiting the best of the best year in and year out. So for me, where I kind of started to see that I may not have been ready to be out there and be a full time starter initially. My motivation was, well, I want to be on the travel team to make sure that I don't get left behind on the weekend, while you guys are going to have fun. So, for yourself, that first year, after you've established yourself and you realize you're going to be a part of this team and get some reps and some playing time, what becomes the motivation for you then?
Just to make a difference. I wasn't gonna go out there and lay an egg. Like you said, coming from Youngstown, you blue collar. You're gonna go out there, you're gonna put in the work, you're gonna put in the extra work. It's all about a team atmosphere. And I wasn't gonna be that weakest link on the team. I don't care if I was a freshman, senior, 5th-year senior, 6th-year senior. I was gonna make sure that I took care of my assignment so everybody else could take care of theirs.
One of the things I was going to ask you, and I think you kind of answered it when you talked about transitioning into your freshman year. Like, so transitioning from being a high school senior to playing at Michigan in that role, it seems to me that it was probably just the same thing. Like, hey, you know what? You're the same as me. We're going to line up. I'm a competitor, and we're going to see what's going to happen. And is that kind of the approach that you took going into that right off the rip?
Yeah, I mean, that was my mentality because, like I said, Coach Jackson said, "Hey, you got to start back at the bottom." And my mentality is like, I'm good with starting back at the bottom, but I'm going to show you what I got and what everything I can give you.
So here's my question then, and this is something that most people have no context of. At some point, your senior year, you're playing in front of a good crowd, 6,000 people. Then all of a sudden, you're at the big house playing in front of 105,000 people. That's probably even a little bit different than me lining up against you. How do you deal with that?
The first time you run out that tunnel, you looking up, it's like, oh my God, where am I at?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said, I'm sure that's for any freshman running out that tunnel because, like you said, you coming from Youngstown, you never seen 105,000 people at a football game. So it gets you pumped, and you looking around, you're like, wow. I said, this is kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing is also at that point in time, man, the Big Ten was it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and so, you got national TV. That has to just be, that's just a different dynamic that mentally, I bet a lot of guys would probably have a tough time um adjusting to. I would think. I don't know.
I mean, I personally, I really didn't. I knew we were getting, national televised, but I, I'm I'm a humble person. It was like, okay,
Yeah.
because when we're done with football, I mean, when I'm off the field, I'm a student.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
people, I mean, some people, oh, kids, whatever, run up to you, autograph. Never turn down, somebody giving somebody autograph. I don't care how long it, people stand in line or whatever. But I don't care where I'm at. If I could be eating, somebody walk up, hey, can I take a picture? Hey, I'll take a picture. It's like, it was just, I knew about the national spotlight, but then I'm just a normal person too. Like I said, I just love, talking to people. I mean, I used to sit there and talk to people at restaurants and, didn't mind it.
So for you, that student experience and being at a competitive high level Division I program, is it hard to maintain that balance in terms of keeping your grades at a certain level and being on top of what you're expected to do as a football player?
You got to be very disciplined, very disciplined. And my mom had a meeting with the coach before I even got to the University of Michigan. And when he came to the house, she said, I don't care if he never played down a football, he gonna get a degree. And when we came, like I said, I was telling Ron this, I said, when we came on our visit, you know, usually, when you get to the University of Michigan and you get your grades and whatever, they'll send the grades to your dorm room, But when I came up there and we met with the counselors and everything, my mom said, look, uh, his report card will be coming home to me. And she put down the address where they can mail it to. So I literally had to call home and say, hey, mom, what did I get in this class, this class, this class? So that's how serious she was. Like I said, she told the coaches that I don't care if he play a down of football, he gonna come out of this university with a degree. And she told Bo Schembechler that. So I was coming out of there with a degree, no matter if and buts or whatever, because my mama only but 5 foot tall, but I wasn't gonna disappoint her and mess with her.
Are you able to give us a little bit of insider's point of view from watching Desmond Howard go through his Heisman season?
That was just an incredible season to, sit back and watch and how it, played out and everything. I mean, and the thing about Desmond was a great guy, but like I said, he kept to himself, he got his work done. He got, did the work in film work and all that. But it was just amazing to see, somebody from Ohio, because he was like him and Elvis Gerback, I think they were from Cleveland.
Yes.
It was amazing to see somebody from Ohio reach that type of level, at the University of Michigan.
Yeah, they were both from Villa Angela St. Joe's, I believe.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm sorry. So with that attention and that spotlight, honed in on him, does that take some of the pressure off of the rest of the team and position groups, or does it enhance the intensity of making sure that you're performing at a top-notch level so that that individual gets opportunities?
I think it enhances it because even though he was having that stellar season, if we would have went on a losing streak, if we didn't win the Big Ten, if we didn't go to a playoff game, I don't know, I could be wrong, but the spotlight might have been turned off of him, because we weren't winning,
Right.
But if you're winning, the spotlight is going to always be on you. You get the primetime games, you get the different things, the good bowl games and things like that. So I just think it enhances everything, so you can, it just enhances everything that we had to, do our job. So, he could do his and, let the cards lay where they lay.
Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned you weren't watching college football, or didn't have necessarily a college team, but you played in probably one of the biggest rivalries in the nation in, Ohio State, Michigan. Um, what was that kind of like for you to being an Ohio guy, um, playing Ohio State, going down there at different times? What was that game and rivalry like?
It was great. I mean, it was
Yeah.
a great rivalry because a lot of the guys that I met on the recruiting trips, went to Ohio State. You got Raymond Harris. It's so funny. This past week, one of my good friends from Youngstown, his son plays for Duke, and he came down. Raymond came down. They all came down. I was like, I'm going to the Georgia Tech and Duke game. And like I said, we haven't seen each other over 30 or 40 years, and you wouldn't even been able to tell. I mean, we were hugging, dapping, seeing, how's everything going, talk for quite a while, So like I said, I had great friends on the other side of that ball, but when we were on that field, we weren't friends. So I mean, it was a great rivalry. Even I never lost to him. So, but I can't say to a lot of players that left, but yeah, I never lost to him. But it was a great rivalry. Like I said, once the game was over, I mean, we talked and we visited each other. They came up to Michigan, we came down to Ohio State. So we were good friends with a lot of kids. Because like I said, a lot of kids back then wanted to go to Ohio State.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I think I was doing a little reading before, and I think John Cooper had just taken over, and you were listed as one of the Ohio guys, one of the Ohio names that got away in one of those recruiting things. So there you go, 4-0 against them. That's all that matters, right?
Exactly.
Now, there's one season there where they list you as played in one game. Did you take a red shirt one of your years there?
I didn't take a red shirt. I took it my second year. It was like a couple games into my second year, and I kept getting stingers in my neck where I would, lose feeling down my arm. And then, like I said, it got so bad after the third game, my nerves were so inflamed that no signals was getting down to my arm. I literally could put my arms up and they'll push it down. I got this one standing up here and this one all the way down. So that's when I took my red shirt because, like I said, that nerve, going from my neck to my shoulder was so inflamed and it wouldn't calm down. Like I said, there was no signals getting down to my arm and my hand.
What was that senior season like for you from your point of view and your perspective?
I mean, it was great. I mean, for one, like I said, never thought in a million years that my teammates would, vote me as captain, but I was very proud, to take that on. I said all I wanted to do is, give back to the team, give back to the younger guys, because like I said, that was my senior year. They got 3, 4, maybe 5 more years to come up. So I wanted to make sure that they were prepared, physically, mentally, just to let them know what your experiences were, going through as a freshman to a senior that they might take away from it and, even get more advanced from where they are.
And then you play in a couple Rose Bowl games. I think you guys are played in the Gator Bowl one year.
Yep.
Is there a difference in terms of preparation and mentality for the bowl season versus your regular season?
Um, I mean, you definitely got to be. I think you got to be more focused because you got so much stuff on your plate. You got appearances. When you go out either to the Rose Bowl, you got to go to Disneyland. You got to do all this extra stuff, but you still got to get your, film work in, your weightlifting in, and your conditioning. You know, but you don't have the books, to study, so you're on break, but you still got to do all the other things.
It's kind of interesting. You come from that, I don't know, for lack of a better term, that golden era of college football, right? Where um, it got a ton of attention. It it's starting to generate some revenue. but it's still the college players are doing it for the love of the game. And now it's complete. I don't want to say it's completely changed, but it's changed with NIL, with you know, different teams leaving leagues because of opportunities for network deals. What are kind of your thoughts about your era that you played in, and what you kind of see happening today? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, I, it's uh, I had a discussion the other day, but it's more like a business now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, before it was for, like you said, the love of the game. You know, kids didn't transfer because back then, if you transfer somewhere, you had to
Yeah.
sit out a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kids stayed where they were and competed. You know, so I mean, I never was a fan of it. You know, if you transferred, you had to sit out a whole year. But nowadays, like I said, the landscape has totally changed with the NIA deals. It's just like it's almost like the wild wild west,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because like I said, you might have a quarterback, and like I said, I'm all for people getting paid, but you might have a quarterback as a 19, 20-year old making over $1 million some dollars, you know, and then you got other kids that's not, making anything. I mean, they'll figure it out where everybody gets this and this, but like I said, it's changed a lot. I know, you look at it now, basically like you said, you got teams leaving conferences because of a deal that went on with the networks. Everybody wanted to get a little bit of piece of the pie, you know and it's not, to me, it's not about the student athlete anymore, because when you ask, USC or UCLA, okay, you're going to fly over here and play University of Michigan. There's a 3-hour time difference, what the kids got to study, then you got to fly back. Are they flying back that Sunday? Those kids are going to be wore out, you know, so like I said, it's, they'll figure everything out. But like I said, it just, you look at it nowadays and you look at it and you say, it's a business.
I kind of I go back and forth on it, because it's one of those things where um you said, you want everybody to have the opportunity to get compensated and make some, because those are the guys putting their livelihoods on the line and their futures on the line. And it's crazy. There's so much money in the game. We were talking
Yeah,
to Julius Livis the last time, and the pressure on the referees in huge bowl games with um, money deals. I mean, it's you hit the nail on the head. It's really a business now, for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like I said, it's totally different. Like you said, some of them kids that's there right now, they're not going to make it to the league. So, what do they have? I know they're going to get their education, but what are they going to have to fall back on? Versus
Yeah,
somebody,
yeah.
So like I said, they'll figure it out. I mean, it's great that the kids can get compensated for
Hmm.
their image and likeness. Because like I said, for many years, you know, the gaming industry was making a whole lot of money off Michigan, Desmond Howard number on there, every year, and the school was making all the money, So,
Yeah,
but they have to, I think,
yeah,
yeah, just have to be some type of structure with it. I mean, they'll figure it out, but it just has to be some type of
yeah,
structure with, kids like that. Cause like I said, you don't want anything to happen to anybody because you got a 19-year-old kid driving around in a BMW Benz or Bentley, and you know how people in the world, oh, okay, let me take that from him. Just like happened to the guy in
hmm,
Washington, somebody tried to carjack him. It's like, wow.
You did have the opportunity to go on to the next level and get a stint in the NFL with the New England Patriots. So leaving that college level and going to the professional level where, the common individual, the spectator, the fan at home, they think that lifestyle as a professional athlete is all glitz and glamour and fun. But when I listen to the player's point of view, one of the things that comes up a lot is to be a professional means that you have to play and perform when you do not want to play and you do not want to perform.
Yeah. Pro football is a business. So yeah, it's you. I mean, at that level, like I said, what guys are getting paid, you have to perform. Ain't there's no if and buts about it. Because when I came in there as a rookie, I mean, we were doing this conditioning test, and it's like I said, this would really open my eyes. There was one guy, nose guard, that Bill Parcells. He told him before he left the year before. He said, "Hey, when you come back here, you better pass the conditioning test for one, and you got to be at a certain weight." Okay, so literally, the guy, he made weight, and I ain't gonna tell you how he made weight. Okay, but he did make weight. But then he had to pass the conditioning test. He failed the conditioning test. I mean, he like to fell out. The trainers were over there, and I was like, okay. I thought he was gonna be all right. Next day we woke up. I said, where's such and such? He said, he on his way home. I said, what do you mean? He said, Bill Parcells said, if you don't pass your weight and your test, you going home. And the next day, he was in the car on his way home. I said, wow. I said, this is real. I
Yeah.
said, this is really, really real.
So how does that hit you when you get your eyes open to the fact that it is a business and sometimes there's not that second chance for you?
Yeah. For me, like I said, it was like, I mean, that was a shock, because I never would think that somebody, if you didn't pass the test, that, he'd send you home. But, I love Bill Parcells, even though I got to only play the year underneath him, he was a no nonsense guy, and that's how all my coaches have been, all my entire career, So I mean, he didn't care if you were a first round pick or you didn't get picked in the draft, you were a free agent. Because that year that it was me and my buddy Troy Barnett from North Carolina were free agent. He kept me and him over two guys they drafted in the third round and gave $500,000 for a signing bonus.
Hmm.
So like I said, he didn't care if you were the top guy or if you wasn't even drafted. If you went out there and performed in practice and in the preseason games, then he was gonna keep you and not keep the other guy if they didn't perform. And like I said, those two guys didn't perform and they got $500,000, in their bank account, and he cut them and sent them on their way. So like I said, my mentality was the same always growing up. Is just going out there. Like I said, for one, it's a team effort. You take care of your job. But I'm gonna give you, like I said, that blue collar mindset and work ethic that I, inherited and was taught in Youngstown, Ohio. And then just, like I said, I took it through my whole career.
And Ron, I don't know if you have more questions in terms of football, but one thing that I wanted to kind of ask was, so it seems like you've had some really good men, um, and women, your mother, mentor you in your life, um, and kind of put you on that right path, and stay humble and focused on the right things. How did all those experiences and those people um, affect you moving after football was over?
Um, I mean, they, like I said, the stuff that my dad and my mom instilled in me, you know, I realized, at a young age, it's a game. It's a game that I was. able to play for so many years, but there's things after football, and that's what I was always, taught was that, hey, if you can play, you can play. If you can't, hey, you got other things that you can do. You got a degree from University of Michigan. You got another degree from Franklin University. So there was different things that you could do. It's not my life didn't revolve around football, because you'll see guys getting, you know, 10, well, 5, 6, 7, 8 surgeries, you know, and then when they get to be a little bit older, like I said, I know some people that, you can hardly walk because you don't have so many surgeries on your knee. You don't have so many surgeries on your back. You know, only surgery I ever had in my life was on my thumb when I broke it in 2 places. You know, I never took a cortisone shot. I said, if I'm in pain and I can't play, I can't play. So that was my mentality. Like I said, if I can play, I can go out there, you know, put a cast on my hand, I'm good, but I'm not gonna, take shots for, this and that, and knowing that later in life it might affect my body in a different way.
Hmm. That's where that business comes into play sometimes.
Yeah, true. Like I said, some people like, well, if I don't do this, then I ain't gonna get a
Yeah.
check. But then
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's your decision. But like I said, people don't think right then and there. They don't think about the future. How's your body gonna react to certain.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, that it's good to hear that perspective from someone who's lived it and been through it and done it. And you're right. There are those professional athletes that can't get the roar of the crowd out of their ear. They miss that recognition and acknowledgement because their identity from a young age has been tied to being an athlete and a performer and ultimately an entertainer.
Hmm.
But what I'm hearing in your responses is that you had a lot of balance in terms of your upbringing. You had a lot of practical influence. And then, from our discussion, you had a father that worked really, really hard to provide the things for you and set that example of what life really means at its core. So it's,
Yep.
to the outside world for a young kid like me at the time, seeing yourself in the paper or hearing your name ring out across the city, it sets a certain level to aspire to find a way to get out of Youngstown, maybe not end up in the mill.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
for those that are coming behind us, it gives them a real perspective on, that dream that a kid may have right now about being a professional athlete. It's not all glitz and glamour, and you don't know how long it's going to last. So what are you going to do after that's all over?
Yep.
So, it's good that, meeting a person of your stature and of accomplishment, it's good to know that you're on the level and that you have a real world practical upbringing. You have a great playing career that you can be proud of, but you also have the levity of being able to know that, okay, when this is done, I'm going to go back into the world. I still have to figure out a way to provide for myself. You did that by obtaining your degree, getting a further education, taking opportunities to complete that part of your life and move forward. So, in saying that, if you had one more down to get out there and put the helmet on one more time, where would that be at? Who would you do it with? And what would the scenario be?
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I got it in me to put it on one more time. But I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't. I don't think back then, you didn't, you know, know too much about HBCUs and things like that. But I don't think I would change anything because all the friendships I made, I think I would have did the same thing because I made great friendships. My roommate Alfie Birch, he was from Warren, Ohio. You know, I don't think I would have changed anything because I wouldn't have made any of those friends. You know, who knows if I'd have went somewhere else, would I have achieved everything that I achieved at the University of Michigan? And it wasn't just me, you know, it was help from, you know, my roommate talking to me, you know, different coaches, you know, that taught me different things, you know, opportunity fall in my lap, you know, when a senior went down and you got 4 people there, you know, in one spot that, you know, somebody's going to get, you know, put that challenge to you. So I don't think I would, you know, change anything. I would put the helmet on for the maize and blue and strap it back up again.